It's no secret. Recent political changes in several countries around the world. This was, by the way, the year where more than half the global population went to elections. And in almost all these elections, the parties in power were sort of rejected. So incumbents lost power, and we have a very different political landscape at the end of 2024 than we had in the beginning of 2024. And this can have ramifications for the global race to deal with climate change and to accelerate decarbonization of energy systems, industry, and so on and so forth. One challenge is that a lot of the political movements that have gained power are considering or threatening adoption of policies that will tend to fragment the global economy. Trade barriers in different forms, tariffs, conditional subsidies, export restrictions, and so on and so forth. The CBAM introduced by the EU is often mentioned and is a big concern in European trade partners. But the US has also implemented a number of such policies, and the incoming administration under President Trump has threatened quite dramatic increases in such trade barriers by implementing excess tariffs. So, of course, this can have an implication for the energy transition. It will make it harder to gain access to low-cost clean technologies in countries that produce them at large scale. And China, of course, is a global leader in the production with the largest production capacities of many clean energy technologies, but also critical raw materials that are necessary to produce these clean technologies. There are concerns about supply chain dependence. There are concerns about the political implications, the security implications, the social and economic implications of this reliance on China. The concern, in my view, is that in the past, the ability to drive the cost declines in technologies like solar photovoltaic has been dependent to some extent on open borders. The technology was invented, discovered in Europe over 100 years ago. In California, it was initially sort of prototyped and tested. Japan started scaling up production for niche applications. Then Germany and other European countries really started investing heavily with feed-in tariffs and other policies. China responded to that demand pull by scaling up production. All of this, each step, contributed to the decline in technology cost. And now solar photovoltaic is the single most important mitigation option we have for the next decade, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. But there's many other decarbonization technologies that we don't yet have at that level of maturity and low cost. Hydrogen, CCS, various industrial decarbonization technologies, batteries, electric vehicles, and so on. So my concern is that as we erect more trade barriers, while we are pursuing some legitimate objectives that we have to consider, but also unfortunately often are sort of susceptible to protectionist reflexes that are really more about helping the domestic economy at the expense of other countries, entering subsidy wars, trade conflicts, etc. We have to navigate that very carefully and find a way to balance those legitimate and justified concerns about, for instance, supply chain dependence with a way of not entirely closing and fragmenting the global economy. I'll say one thing, technology cost declines happened in better times, and the fortunate thing is they cannot be reversed. Solar PV, under only the unlikely circumstances, would suddenly become very expensive again. All likelihood it will continue dramatically declining in cost, the same with wind, with battery technology, with electric vehicle technology, and so on and so forth. So if we are able to sustain, even if one or two or three countries withdraw from the process, but others keep on investing in research and development, in deployment of these technologies, scaling up manufacturing capacity, we will see the continued cost declines. They drive decarbonization, even if the politics no longer is behind that drive. And so, in a strange way, technology might now be our best hope.